motorcycle enthusiasts. Today I will show you how to remove and reinstall the front wheel of a Suzuki GS500E. First, I'll show you what we need. I have here a tray for the screws, an old scissor jack, but a wooden block or something similar will also work. I'll show you in a moment how it works. I'm using socket wrenches in sizes 12mm, 17, and 19mm, as well as an 8mm Allen key. Of course, you can also use a ring spanner here, for example. Here I have the appropriate drives for them and a small 10mm socket with a matching ratchet. So friends, let's get started. First, I loosen these two screws here that hold the brake caliper. And it's not absolutely necessary, but you'll see later that it can be quite helpful if we have it loose. Here there are two screws with an 8mm Allen head. Sometimes there's also a screw with a hex head installed. You just need to take a look. Make sure the tool fits well. Okay? So if there's dirt in here, remove it first and work downwards with a jerk. Same here. And now we'll continue here and first loosen all the screws in the front area, as long as the motorcycle is still on the ground at the front. It's easier that way. Next, this screw here, that's the axle clamp. A 12mm hex head. Another little jerk. Great. Now we need the small ratchet with the 10mm socket. Up here is still the holder for the brake hose. This is actually more of a task if you still need to remove the fork. If you only need to access the front wheel, it's not absolutely necessary. But on this side, it's good if the holder is removed here. It actually gets in the way later. It holds the speedometer cable in place here. Also, a 10mm head. First, loosen everything. So Kensin, and now we move on to the axle. The way it's installed here is correct. The nut must be on the side of the speedometer drive, and the axle is inserted from this side, from the brake disc side. We need a 17mm hex here and a 19mm hex here, and that's what I'm going to do now. So, tools are in place. 17 over here. Hold it firmly here, 19 here. And now with a small jerk downwards. Yes. We're at that point. The nut can go underneath right away. Okay, it's quite difficult. Then it gets better. So, and now we need our jack or a small wooden block next. We'll continue immediately. So let's continue. I've placed this jack centrally here, under the engine, so between both exhaust pipes, and now I'm turning it up a little bit. The motorcycle only needs to be lifted so that the front wheel, you see here, it's already tipping over. Yes, just a tiny bit is hanging in the air. And for that, you could also use a suitable wooden block of the right height. Get some help. Someone presses down on the back of the motorcycle, then the front comes up a little bit, and you place a suitable piece of wood underneath. Please not necessarily under the exhaust, but here at this spot. And then we can continue working on the front wheel. So, you see the front wheel is hanging a bit in the air here, right? There's a tiny bit of space underneath. The nut is off. Now I reach under here with my left hand, lift the wheel a bit, and can push the axle through. I'll show you again, okay? So, you usually don't need a hammer here. I can simply press here. There you go. So, when I've lifted the wheel a bit, I take the wheel in the other hand and can pull the axle out over here. Can you come over a bit? Great. Thank you. There you go. Axle out. Now carefully lower the front wheel and move it a bit forward. And over here, please, once more over here. Over here, I hold the spacer with 2 fingers. Yes. So it doesn't pop out immediately. And here we have the speedometer drive. And with a small jerk forward, we can remove it, take off the spacer. It sits with the wide side on the wheel, set it aside, and we can already move the wheel forward out of here. So friends, the wheel should go back in. Your new tire, for example, is on. And now we face the task of threading the spacer at this point, threading the speedometer drive at this point, and at the same time, threading the brake disc here at the back into the brake caliper, specifically between the two brake pads. And that is, if you haven't done it that often, well, it's not the easiest task. Do we have this nicely on the picture? Yes, you can see it, right? We need to get in between there. And that's why I said earlier, let's loosen these screws here already. And now I'm unscrewing them. This way, we can first install the wheel and then thread the brake caliper onto the disc. This is usually significantly easier. So, the screw is out, the brake caliper is off. Now this can move back. A word about the speedometer drive. You see two tabs here? Yes. And there are also two tabs inside here. These two must, so to speak, fit into the gap. They must not align tab to tab, but must fit into the gap. If it doesn't fit here, you can simply turn it. That's not a problem. Yes, so they are positioned horizontally here. If I position them vertically, then I can simply thread this in. Like this. Make sure the wheel comes over a bit here, yes, so that it holds in place. Over here, the spacer sleeve comes to the wheel with the wide side. Like this. And now I've freshly greased the axle. I already position it here so that it sits just a little bit inside. Okay? And now the wheel is carefully lifted. And the axle is threaded through. That worked well now. Sometimes I also curse for a moment, yes. With just a little bit of pressure here. If it doesn't work, lift it up over here, yes. So that it fits together. And then it actually goes very, very easily. So this also works without a hammer. There, it is. And then the nut can go on here. You must not forget to tighten it later. It's better to do this when the vehicle is back on the ground, as it hangs in the air. It's a bit of a wobbly situation. I'll screw it on here first. So, and now we take care of the brake caliper. Here you can see the brake pads, they still look good. These small grooves here are wear indicators. Do we see them? You can see them perfectly, yes. Here and here. If these are no longer visible, then the brake pads are worn out. And in this gap, the disc must fit. And you can now carefully thread it here. Snap on it. Now over it. Then the screws can go back in here. So. And the second one. And then we can lower the motorcycle again. So remove the jack or the wooden blocks, depending on how you did it. I'll do that now and then I'll show you the final steps. We are fastening the wheel again. And I have already set my tool with the 17mm hex on this side. I have the 19mm socket for the nut here. Now this is being tightened. I'll include the tightening torque in the video information below. So, first the axle, then next the clamping down here. That's 12mm. And finally, the two bolts of the brake caliper are securely fastened and securely tightened. And now, of course, if you had it off, here is the 10mm hex that holds the brake hose. And over here, the 10mm that holds this small clip 4, the speedometer cable. Yes, please check everything once more at the end. Calmly push it a little. Make sure the brake is working. Sometimes, during disassembly, the brake pads might have been pushed apart a little. Yes, it can be difficult sometimes if the disc is grooved and already has a large edge at the top, then the caliper is always very hard to remove. So I basically have to move it back and forth a little to be able to remove it. But that's a sign that you should definitely measure how worn your brake disc is. Yes, check everything at the end and have fun with the project. See you in the next video.